Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop, and today we're talking about Spokeshaves. They can be the easiest and simplest tool to use in the world, and they can also be the most difficult and just drive you crazy. Let's take a look at how to use them and some of the problems you might run into. Spokeshaves come in all different types and sizes. If you want to see a collection of them that I have a whole video on all about Spokeshaves where I go into far more detail on the different types and how to sharpen them. But basically, they come down into two different types. Number one, you have your flat bottom Spokeshaves. This is a Stanley 151. It's one of my favorites. Really simple, really easy. Lots of people have remade this one, but it's got this big flat bottom on it. And that flat bottom means it's really nice to register. Everything will sit flat on it. You can get a nice clean shaving, and it's just about how far does that iron stick out. Number two, you have round bottom Spokeshaves. It's not flat, and you can put a flat item on there and it can be at any angle. And these come in all different shapes. You can actually get some that look like this but have a rounded bed on them. This one is one from Miller Falls that I absolutely love. But yeah, round bottoms can be a little more difficult because there's a lot of different ways you can put them on, but it also gives you more control. It's kind of the same thing if you think about a chisel. If you use a chisel with the bevel up, it doesn't give you a lot of control, but it's very stable. You can push a straight line relatively easily. But if you flip the chisel around and you go bevel down, now you have a lot more control. You have the ability to make it curve and do other interesting things. But the problem is that takes a lot more skill because it can do anything and therefore it will do anything unless you actually control it. And that's really the big difference between a flat bottom and a round bottom Spokeshave, is that a flat bottom is really quick and easy. It will give you nice straight lines and it will do things relatively simply. A round bottom Spokeshave takes more skill and more practice, but it can give you more control and allow you to do things that a flat bottom can't. In general, if you're first beginning, get a flat bottom. It's easy, it'll get you going. This is what I generally tell people give to kids because any monkey can play with this. Once it's set up right, it just glides, it's fun, and you get curls out of it fantastically. But a round bottom Spokeshave can do anything that a flat bottom can. So if you only have one, get the round bottom because it will do all of it. It just takes a little more control. So here's a demonstration stick I have it. And the nice thing about this is it has a switching grain. There's kind of a curve in here. So I need to go that way at the bottom, and up here I need to go this way. Nice thing with the Spokeshave is you can easily do it. You can go with the grain one way, then you can turn around and go with the grain the other way. You can push it or you can pull it. It doesn't really make any difference. With a flat bottom Spokeshave, it's really easy because either it's on it or it's off of it. If it just registers on that flat bottom, you set it up and you can pull it along. You get a nice clean curl all the way up. With a round bottom, it kind of goes back and forth. This is kind of digital. It's either 1 or 0. Whereas this is analog. It can be anywhere in between. If I have it resting back here, I'm not taking anything. If I roll it forward, I'm not taking anything. It's right in that middle where it sits on it. I can get a nice clean shaving. The problem is finding that spot where it sits in the middle. And this can be really frustrating because it looks relatively easy. It looks like I'm just going with the flow. But this is a decent amount of practice that it takes to bring that up. The nice thing about it is I can rotate a little bit more or a little bit less, and I can take a much thinner shaving, and then I can rotate it back and get a really heavy shaving. And the only difference is a slight rotation of the Spokeshave. One of the first things you'll notice is the way I'm grabbing it. I'm not holding it like this. I'm not fisting it. I'm just holding it with my fingertips. The only thing that's really controlling it is my index finger and my thumb. The rest is here just for stability or a place to set it. I'm just going to pinch it here and I'm going to pull it along. This also allows me to very easily rotate it between those two fingers. And I can find that spot that it's working and run along it. Here you can see I'm not taking off anything. I'm rolled a little forward. So I'm going to rotate it back just a degree or so. And now I'm taking something. And I can rotate a little farther back and I can take a heavier shaving, and a heavier shaving, and a heavier shaving, a really heavy shaving, just by a little bit of rotation. It takes a bit of skill to know that rotation. I can come back here with a flat shave, and this isn't a deep enough curve that this will generally take it. But you can see it's kind of bouncing in and out as it gets to the bottom there. Now I've flattened it out enough that I can do this curve with a flat bottom. Now with a round bottom, I can actually come in here and scoop this out and get a much deeper concavity. And then this one I'm probably down to about a 4-inch concavity that I can get it down into. And as I'm doing it, I'm actually going to be rotating it as I go through, sort of scooping the material out. So as I'm starting up here, I'm at a little higher angle, and then I'm going to rotate it as it comes around until it scoops out. But that's deep enough now I can bring in my flat bottom, and the flat bottom can't reach it because the iron doesn't stick out far enough. And I were to stick it out far enough to do this, then it'd be chattering because there'd be nothing supporting it. Whereas with the round bottom, because it's rounded, I can get into some pretty tight concavities. So if you can do more with this than you can with the flat bottom, how do you master this? Lots of practice. What you want to do is set it up and roll it up onto the nose. You want it on the nose where it's not cutting anything. And then you're going to slowly roll it back until the blade engages. So I'm not cutting, I'm not cutting, I'm not cutting, I'm rolling back slowly. Now I'm wisping the edge. That's where I want to practice holding it right at that spot. And then roll it back just a little farther. Now I'm taking off fairly light shavings. And roll it back a little farther. Now I'm taking a really heavy cut. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is if I'm taking a really heavy cut, I may end up getting some vibration in here, and I'll get those ridges. The way you get rid of the ridges is you skew it, put it to the angle, and now you can get rid of the ridges this way, skew it the other direction, and it'll get rid of the ridges in the other direction, and you'll have a nice smooth surface that you can then register on again. But it's all about learning where that angle is. And for the first few times, you're going to have to do that slow roll back until you get it, and then you lock that angle, and that's what you're shaving at. You want to be right on that edge of not taking anything, and just learn to hold that. Once you practice it a couple dozen times, it just starts to click. It's one of those things that you don't really notice. It just gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier until one day you pick it up and you don't even think about it. You're not testing it. It's just naturally going to be right at that angle. And it feels really good. But it's a skill. And as with anything with hand tools, the only way you're going to learn it is to do it and to mess up. And if you mess up, then oh well, that's part of learning. The only way you're going to learn is to make mistakes and try it out. I can teach you all day long, and I can talk all day long, and I can be right beside you and guide your hands. But until you actually do it, your muscles aren't going to learn anything. But once you do get a muscle memory, it's fantastic. It just works. And that's why I generally use a rounded bottom Spokeshave far more than I use a flat bottom. Now there are times when I'm just doing a flat chamfer or something just needs to be flat, and that works really well. It's quick, it's easy, it's simple, there's almost no setup on this, and this works really well. But the rounded bottom is kind of nice. It gives you that control. It puts you in the driver's seat as opposed to having the tool do what it wants to do. Now another problem that a lot of people have with rounded bottom Spokeshaves is the irons tend to be very, very, very small. And the problem with that is, well, they're hard to sharpen because you can't really get a hold of it. In this case, this iron is that tiny little thing. And so if I'm trying to hold it like this, freehanding it's almost impossible. I mean, I can put it on here and let it slide on my fingernails, but most of the time what I'm going to do is grab some vice grips. I'm going to put it on at the angle I want it, slide the vice grips in, and lock it down. I'm going to use that as a gauge, and now I can put my fingers on here like this and actually sharpen it. Using vice grips to sharpen Spokeshaves is a great idea. I think I first saw that from Paul Sellers. But it's one of those that just, it works. And it's one of the things that I almost always use a jig. I just don't expect vice grips to be my jig. I like to freehand, but when it's something small like this, freehanding is very, very difficult. This actually works well. You will find occasionally you grind a flat spot on the back of your vice grips, but it's not a problem. Next, the problem can be putting it back together. These can actually be a bit tricky, especially with these Miller Falls where they're just held in with a screw. You want to set it in there, get the screws almost tight, not totally tight, but get it close. So before they tighten down, they're still a bit loose. I'm going to tap it back so that the iron is sticking all the way back. And then I'm going to tighten these down just a bit, not a whole lot, just until they start to grab so that it has a little bit of friction on there. Then with a plane adjustment mallet, I'm going to put my finger up here and just feel when it's sticking out just a little bit. And sometimes I'll have one side sticking out a little bit more than the other so that I can get the depth adjustment a little more. Right about there. And then we tighten it down. Now the nice thing about this with a rounded bottom is you don't have to worry about sticking out an exact amount. It can stick out more or less because the thing that determines how deep the cut is not how far it sticks out of the mouth, it's by the rotation of the fingers. With a flat bottom Spokeshave, you have to be very, very careful because the thing that determines the amount of cut is how deep it's adjusted. So with this, you have to be very careful about how you set it up. With this, not so much. Then we can bring it back over here and take it to town. A rounded bottom Spokeshave can be an absolute treat to use. They are a lot of fun once you get it figured out. But until that time, they can be very, very frustrating. Sometimes it's nice to just grab a flat bottom and go to town on it. Now, this is a Miller Falls, and it is rather expensive. They are really, really nice because they have a very small diameter, and I can get this down to a very tight one. They also make some cigars that are a little fatter, and then you can also get the standard 151 style that have a rounded bottom on them. And you can pick these up rather dirt cheap, even on Amazon. I'll try and leave a link to that down below. And they work great. The nice thing about these is that there's nothing to them. They are really simple tools that you really can't make them that wrong. They're really, really nice for what they do, and even a cheap one does really well. But eventually you might find that you're wanting to get to something a little bit better, or yeah, there's lots of others and you start to get an addiction. Hope this answered a few questions. Rounded bottom Spokeshaves, a lot of fun. Need more skill? Flat bottom Spokeshaves, anyone can do it. Great for kids. They're just a really simple tool to use. They each have their own pros and cons, and I end up using both of them. And I end up using lots of other ones too. So yeah, Spokeshaves, lots of fun. Have fun with them. If you do have any other questions, let me know that down below. I do read through all the questions and I answer as many as I can get to, so thank you for that. Putting the comments does help the channel, as well as hitting the like, share, subscribe. Thank you. Really, honestly, those do help us get in front of more people, and that helps out the channel. It's a really quick and easy way to keep us going. Thank you for that. If you want to take it one step farther, there's a bunch of people scrolling over here. They are patrons on Patreon. They are the ones quite literally keeping the lights on and keeping this channel going. We are sponsored by you, the viewer, not by brands and other people out there. So I hope you like that. As well as people who have clicked the little join button down below and become a member. We do have special perks for both, other videos and content that occasionally come out, and chats. So if you'd like to find out more about that, you can find Patreon in the description down below, or click the little join button and become a member here on YouTube. So thank you. Without patrons and members, we wouldn't be here. I think that'll do it for now, and until next time, have a wonderful day. You know, one of these days, I'm going to have to make a wheel, and that way I can actually shave a spoke, because I've never shaved a spoke with a Spokeshave.